So this is a short video that I wanted to make for you guys just to walk you through some of the manifestos. I know when I'm faced with a lot of reading, I really like it if someone sort of introduces me to it because it kind of gets me enthusiastic for it. So I thought I would just make a few comments about some of these manifestos to give you an idea of the kinds of things that you might look for and be interested in them. So we'll start out with the Now Bill of Rights from 1968. The most important thing to notice about the Now Bill of Rights is that it's a Bill of Rights that's all about equality. And you might say, well, of course it is. But think about what their frame is here. They don't want to change society so much as they want in on the kinds of things other people have. This is often called neoliberalism. In other words, you make the world better by just increasing people's access to the things that are already there. And you could think about this in contrast to, say, revolution, right? Or complete transformation. Now, there's no revolution here. They just want rights expanded to let other people in. They want, the system is fine, it just needs to open up to more people. So they want a constitutional amendment, which, presumes that they like the Constitution. They want laws banning sex discrimination, which suggests that they believe in the rule of law. They want things like maternity leaves and employment and social security benefits, which suggests that they are happy with employment, a lot of employment practices. They just want better ones: maternity leave rights, social security benefits, tax deductions, so the tax system is going to be in place. This isn't necessarily about super poor people, right? This is things like tax deduction for your house and child care expenses. These are really important, but they're often more middle class concerns, quite often. Child daycare centers, this could actually significantly help all kinds of people. Equal and unsegregated education. By unsegregated, they mean unsegregated by sex. And I think it's really important to remember, which you might not know, that many colleges and universities were closed to women in the 1960s, up until the 1960s. Graduate programs would not accept women. Even when I was applying to college, they had just desegregated places like Dartmouth, and Dartmouth was not happy about it. They were not happy to let women in, and they were pretty harassing to them. So when they say equal and unsegregated education, it's because many schools and programs were actually closed to them. And I knew of a professor when I was in grad school who had been known to have said he wouldn't give any woman an A in a graduate class because women were incapable of getting A's. That's the kind of thing that used to go on. And so this is the kind of thing they want to change. But it's very much about changing the system. Good stuff: equal job training, allowances for women in poverty, the right of women to control their reproductive lives. Okay, so that's the Now Bill of Rights. First, you might think of something like the Red Stockings Manifesto, which is not so much about concrete things as it's about theory. It's theorizing a better world. It's much more transformative, much more about really changing the way things operate than the Now Bill of Rights was. The Red Stockings Manifesto is Marxist. It sees women as a class, an oppressed class, right? The way Marxism sees the proletariat, the workers, as an oppressed class. And it carries that theory through. They identify their agents of oppression as men, as Marxists identify agents of oppression as, right, the owners of factories, right? And that the agents of oppression, male supremacy dominates women. Women need to stand up to it. And you might recognize in this language some of the similar kinds of concepts that have been used in Black Lives Matter more recently. The idea that people benefit from oppression, and that it's really important to renounce the benefits that you get. So here they're saying all men have benefited, they've received economic, sexual, and psychological benefits. All men have oppressed women, and they need to renounce the benefits that they get. Women can't oppress men, they say. It's just not systemically, doesn't happen. Doesn't mean it can't happen individually. It's just the system isn't set up that way. They want internal democracy, so they're calling on their sisters to unite and men to give up male privilege, much as organizations like Black Lives Matter have called on white people to give up white privilege, to interrogate white privilege and admit that they have it and fight for a world in which it doesn't exist. So that this is a much more transformational kind of document. We will not ask what is revolutionary or reformist, only what's good for women, but it is a more revolutionary document. We are going all the way. Scum Manifesto is famous because it's so funny and angry and over the top. It's a really fun read. There's only part of it here, I think. It is not afraid to be angry, to be offensive, it's not tiptoeing around its resentment of male supremacy and patriarchy. Read it as something rhetorical, and by rhetorical I mean it's intentionally trying to provoke you. It's like a poem or something that's trying to shock and push you to think about why you might be offended. So think about if you're offended by the Scum Manifesto, think about what you're offended by and why Valerie Solanas wants you to get over your everyday politeness and think about getting really, really angry. The River Collective statement is really, really important because it's not angry. It's much more measured and rational, but it's very much about intersectionality, and it was a revolutionary kind of manifesto in its stress on the necessity of looking at not just gender, but race and class and the way that those things all work together. It's very it makes its argument very carefully. It's very reasonable. It builds an argument for the collective and for why Black feminists need to stand up. So it's not angry. It's not emotional at all. But it's a very, very thoughtful, very smart, deep analysis of intersectionality. We believe that sexual politics under patriarchy is as pervasive in Black women's lives as are the politics of class and race. And important things like, although we are feminists and lesbians, we feel solidarity with progressive Black men and do not advocate the fractionalization that white women who are separatists demand. We don't want to just throw over Black men because our situation as Black people necessitates that we have solidarity around the fact of race, which white women, of course, do not need to have with white men unless it is their negative solidarity as racial oppressors. So they really want to emphasize that the struggle is on many fronts, and then they want to make coalition. We realize that the liberation of all oppressed peoples necessitates the destruction of the political economic systems of capitalism and imperialism as well as patriarchy. That's not neoliberalism, right? That's not the now Bill of Rights. This is the call to overthrow the system as it exists and grow something new. We are socialists because we believe that work must be organized for the collective benefit. But we have to make sure that a socialist revolution is also a feminist and anti-racist revolution. You can't just have a socialist revolution that doesn't take into account these aspects of intersectional identity. So some of the really important things to pay attention to in the Combahee River Collective statement. Vervain, Sherry Moraga and Gloria Anzaldúa are talking about intersectionality and what it means to be third world women, Chicana women, they are not as measured as the Combahee River Collective. They are emotional, they are angry. One of the great things about Gloria Anzaldúa is that she often will use Spanish words in the middle of sentences and paragraphs and refuse to translate them because she's not talking to non-Spanish speakers. I think her sense of audience, she is writing to women writers of color who speak Spanish, and it's their, they're talking to each other. And if you want to participate in the conversation, you can try harder. Try to figure out what she's saying. Learn a little Spanish. Look for context clues. She's not talking to you. She's happy to have you read, but she's talking to her sisters. And often angrily, right? Talking to white men, we erase your white male imprint when you come knocking on our doors with your rubber stamps to brand our faces with dumb, hysterical, passive puta, pervert. When you come with your branding irons to burn my property on our buttocks, we will vomit the guilt, self-denial, and race hatred you have force-fed into us right back into your mouth. We are done being cushions for your projected fears. We are tired of being your sacrificial lambs and scapegoats. And, that could be from the Scum Manifesto. I mean, it's that angry. But it's not being funny. It's not trying to be over the top as a prank. It is, it's genuinely angry and genuinely interested in getting third world women, women of color, Chicanas, Latinas to organize. Finally, the Animal Manifesto, Gender Identity and Vegan Feminism in the 21st Century. It's really a much more recent one, and I wanted to know what you thought of it in the context of these earlier feminist manifestos. Do you think this is as important? Do you think it isn't? She's talking about feminism and treating animals well, and a lot of people who believe in animal rights actually believe that you cannot be a good human being to other humans if you are living a life that is cruel to animals. It's too hard. You're not cultivating the kind of character that could really be a good person in the world. So that's worth a look, I think. And you can think about it in comparison to these other manifestos as a more contemporary turn, and something that maybe opens up the idea of a manifesto for you, what it can do, what it can stand for, what it can be.